So it may come as no surprise to any of you folks, but I frequent a lot of online competitive Warhammer spaces. And time again, I have found that there's actually a pretty large vocal minority against Warhammer 40k coaching. And as somebody who has received coaching from more than one coach and finds great value in the service, I wanted to take a moment to evaluate why this stigma exists and maybe break down some of that stigma as well. So strap yourselves in because we're going to talk all about coaching today. My name is Tanya, otherwise known as the War Mistress. I've painted some minis, I've played some games, and I'm on a mission to be nice and roll dice. We are back with another episode of Be Nice and Roll Dice, and my frequent collaborator, Skari, is here. And
Hello.
we're going to talk about something that I was shocked to find out was actually a contentious topic. Did
I wonder
you?
what that is, Tanya.
Wow, I'm sure you've seen it online. As a Warhammer coach, I'm sure that you've seen it online that some people have really strong feelings about Warhammer 40k coaching.
Yes, they do. Just in general, there seems to be, well, with the rise of Warhammer as sort of like a way of people to make a living, a way of people to express themselves like in a competitive setting and going to events and trying to do well. The rise of just 40K coaching, AOS coaching, or just gaming coaching in general, that's not new to other sports or other games, has sort of made its way into the game that we play, right?
Hmm.
Most frequently, Warhammer 40,000, and that it is polarizing.
Hmm.
Some people appreciate the value of it and partake in using or reaching out to 40k coaches or just coaches in general. Some people are indifferent and they go, "It's cool that it's there," that they would never sort of like get coaching. And then you have other people who disagree with it but don't say anything, and people who are adamantly against it and very vocal about their dislike for um, there being 40k coaches or just in our tabletop game, right?
Hmm. Well, since you are a coach and since I receive coaching from you, I thought maybe we could explore this topic together. And I did a little bit of a sneaky poll of the community. So I came up to some conclusions, but I thought we would get started by having you introduce yourself for people who may not know who you are and what it is that you do, and how you came to become a Warhammer coach.
Well, my name is Ridvan. Everybody knows me as Skari, the Archon Skari. I've been doing content creation, gaming, filming, battle reports, and other stuff like that, and coaching for 3 years now. In this November, it marked my 3-year anniversary from basically shutting down my old business and jumping into content creation full time. And so I've been gaming for about 20 years. I'm a member of the competitive WTC, or the World Team Championship Canadian team. So I'm part of the national team, and I play lots of games, mainly being 40k. And I got into coaching shortly after my run, or during my run of the ITC season in 2018, where that was where I really kind of like showed the world, I guess, that I could play with a terrible army and still do well. And that sort of spearheaded my my toes into it. And so since then, I've been working with a variety of different people. I do a lot of content on Patreon. I collaborate with Mini Wargaming, doing videos and the campaigns and battle reports. And I play the game both competitively but also narratively. And so I feel like in terms of gaming, and if you haven't heard of me, I'm like a hobbyist, like an all-around gamer. I do painting, I build terrain, I play for fun and create narratives. I do crusades, but I will also play hard if I need to play competitive. And so, I feel like that ability to do a little bit of everything has made me almost unique in that sense. So if you need to know anything about me, it's that I'm an all-rounder.
I also consider myself an all-rounder.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I would agree with you, Tanya.
Okay, excellent. We agree.
Yeah,
So, what is it that first off, do you like coaching? And if you do, what is it about coaching that you like?
I do like coaching. My both my parents are teachers, so I grew up with two parents who, like, my dad started a school, like he started a primary school back in the day. So throughout my entire development, I've seen teachers and been a part of that sort of world of, getting people to, like, imparting knowledge. I find that when I went to school, I went to university to study history, to study English. I did an honors bachelor degree in arts. And the aim was to go into teachers college and eventually become a teacher of some sort. Like, I've always loved the aspect of teaching. That's something that's always been appealing to me. And with 40k coaching, I've been able to sort of marry that love for imparting knowledge and helping with people's development and growth, but also doing it within the context of something that I love, which is Warhammer. That just happens to be a career for me now, which, you put it all together and it's fun because I enjoy teaching. I am okay at the game and I love seeing people grow. That's the humble pie there. Um, if not, my ego gets really big, and then the camera gets knocked off its stand, and it's like a whole mess. Um, and it's just something that I really enjoy doing. So I feel very lucky that I am in a position to do it, and I think the thing I love the most is seeing people succeed more rapidly than I ever did in a shorter period of time. And I
Hmm.
think that's the coolest part of it all is kind of seeing them grasp concepts that took me 20 years to develop and then just put them into practice, within a few months and then go, "Hey, this makes sense." And I go, "Well, I would have loved to have talked to someone about that when I was learning the game."
You sound a little salty about it.
You know what? Back in my day, we had to
Yes.
we had to walk through 10 feet of snow to
Oh
go to
God, you lived
school.
in Mexico.
I did. 10 feet of sand. No, just
Okay.
kidding. Um, no, but yeah, it's like back in the day, like, you either learnt the hard way or you just didn't learn. There was no, like, there were a couple of forums and like online things, but it wasn't really as global a community as it is now.
Hmm.
Nowadays, it's really cool because if I want to talk to the winner of the ITC circuit or somebody who's constantly doing well at events, I can see who that person is. I can more than likely find a way to contact them using social media, and I can network with them, and I can learn and get tips and tricks, especially if it's for a faction or an army that I really enjoy, and and kind of like learn from that. And I think it's really cool to that we live in that sort of society, that in that age, in this era right now.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, so let's like get into it. The topic at hand. I'm going to say like research because it's not really like research, but from my observations, it seems like, yeah, limber up. It seems like there are three reasons, perhaps, that this is like a contentious topic, and three reasons why people seem to be kind of um, like the people who are sort of like anti coaching, these seem to be the reasons why. So,
Mhm,
the first one that I've sort of seen or come across is the idea that, well, nobody actually needs coaching. And all that you have to do in order to learn how to play is just play the game. That's it. Just get reps in, and that's all you need in order to learn. Um, and there's a number of things that I think this doesn't really take into account. The first one is that some people just struggle to learn. I would actually put myself into this category of somebody who just like I struggle to read rules and like understand interactions and things like that. And like having a coach, having somebody like you that I can come to and be like what does this actually mean, right?
Or
To
go through like something that we worked on recently was going through different scenarios, right? Where
mhm,
it challenged you like from a learning perspective because some of the little scenarios were overwhelming and like had lots of moving parts to them. And using something like Tabletop Simulator, for example, but being able to kind of go through it and go, hey, this application of this game, right? Charging into something to then pile into something to then get to somewhere else, that sort of thing. Like, and seeing it visually, but going through someone who can explain the process of like A, make a charge, B, make sure that this is happening, C, activate, do this, go that way to create or get the like this unit not to attack or that unit to stay where it is or pin a play unit in place or take an objective. And being able to have someone to go through that, yeah, is
mhm.
useful.
And I think too sometimes you might be limited to the people that you're playing against. So, what if you're very isolated and the only people you can play against are your friend group? Maybe you're not going to be exposed to some of those more like advanced techniques in the game. If you're not
Yeah.
exposed to it and that's the only way that you can actually learn how to play is through playing those games, well, you're only going to be able to get so far.
Oh, agreed. And let me preface this with saying coaching is not for everyone. Like, it is not something that everyone's going to want to do. It's not something that is fit for everyone. Some people are very like School of Hard Knocks, like go to a bunch of events, get beat up every time. They soak it in that way, they learn, and they sort of want to make their own journey.
Mhm,
But when I started coaching in general, shout out to Nick, right? He kind of spearheaded the whole 40k coaching with the Brown Magic, right? Like he literally went, like made a name for himself, put himself out there and laid the groundwork for now what has become like an industry, right, of
mhm,
of 40k coaching or coaches. And the way I like to see it for anybody who's sort of like I don't want to say naysayer because that doesn't like that's just like a very negative connotation, but somebody who disagrees that people need coaching, okay, which is the first point. Like you don't need coaching, you just need to play games, right? It's like it's like getting a personal trainer for body image, right? Or anything like if you just want to go to the gym, you can just go to the gym. And if
mhm,
you know what you want out of the gym, you can get a reps, you can know what weights you're going to use, like what exercise you do. And a lot of times you're going to either have a friend who knows tell you like what would work best for you or your body or a diet that you need to take to get the best results if you go to the gym like once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, whatever it is. Or some people say, hey, I want to, it's, the summer's coming up. I need to like tone up, whatever it is. Sure. And then they'll go and they'll get like a personal trainer who will literally say, hey, you want to get a six pack? Okay. Then you don't do this exercise. You don't do this exercise. You do this exercise this many times with this much weight and you eat this much stuff and we'll get it in this amount of time. Right. And that's somebody who's a professional who will be like, I'm going to get you to where you want to go. But, they're like you're hiring them to essentially guide you in the right direction.
mhm,
So other than just going to the gym and hoping to get a six pack by doing exercises or whatever it is.
mhm.
So that's like the difference. And some people like that independent study and some people are like I don't want to waste time. I just want to focus on and like get what I need and so I'm going to get somebody to help me, motivate me, tell me that, yell at me while I'm lifting weights to like, get me going.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I think also like a lot of it like this idea that you just need to get reps in, it doesn't take into account somebody's lifestyle,
no.
right? Like maybe there is somebody out there who can get 3 or 4 or 5 games in a week,
Yep.
but maybe there's other people who have 2 jobs and are content creators and do a podcast and stream with this guy twice a week. And, it's really hard for some people to actually get those quality reps in.
Yeah.
So the idea that, like, well, all you need to do is play more games, sometimes that's not an option.
Yeah.
for people.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not. Now, as a coach, you always like the aim is to essentially create a regime that also works within a client's timetable, time schedule, right? So if I'm coaching someone who can play one game a month, right? Like it's going to be different. The growth level and what we expect from session to session is going to be different than somebody who plays a game every day, right?
Hmm.
Which is also like people who I've worked with have like the time to they go to work, they get home, they go into TTS, and they're playing one or two games a night, and then they go and they kind of like do that throughout the course of the week, and their development tends to be a lot faster. Yes, playing lots of games definitely works, but it's also about identifying problem areas quicker and faster. Even if you only play one or two games, if you take a picture of your deployment, or you take a picture of your secondaries, or your what you picked, and as somebody who has more experience, I can pick, okay, that unit out of position for this mission, or you got very aggressive with this unit on your first turn movement. Like you can kind of pinpoint areas to expedite that growth, and so you can condense the learning into less amount of games, having someone sort of like nudge you in the right direction after you play those games. You kind of break them down.
Hmm. Hmm. And then the last part, this is the most important part for me that I think people don't take into account when they say you just need to get games in. Sometimes people might come to you for something other than just winning, right?
Yep,
Their goals might be something completely different than just like, I want to win the next RTT.
yep.
And in cases like that, because that is actually my particular situation as well, um, in those situations, just getting more games in isn't necessarily going to help you reach that goal.
Mhm. Yeah, it's not just about playing games or getting better at the games, as you said.
Hmm.
It's something like I don't get enough games, and I need someone who's got their foot in the meta
Hmm.
to talk about the biggest, baddest things that are people using or coming out or being used at events, so that when I go to an event, I don't get blindsided by what's happening because I
Hmm.
don't get to go to events very often.
Yeah.
That's one side of things.
I feel like I am fairly good at being open. So I actually kind of have two coaches. One is more like a mentor in Alex McDougall. So he's sort of like in my local and we talk about games and matchups and stuff. But Skari is my mentality coach. And you're sort of saying in the green room that that's like your specialty?
Yeah, so if you were to go to like the Art of War, we've got like literally a drop-down menu of coaches, right?
Hmm.
And each coach has like either a faction that they're very specific on, or mainly factions, and they go, "Oh, I've won this many events and I've won with this many factions." So if you want to learn Tyranids, you can go for Alex McDougall, or you can go for like John Lennon, or if you want to learn Drukari, you can go for like Brad Chester, who's been crushing it with Drukari this season, or I play Drukari forever, so I'm like a specialist with that faction. But I feel like one of the things that sets me apart is that mentality thing, right? And it's one of the reasons I like coaching is because I try to transcend the let's just get good with your faction to win a bunch of games, and it's more about learning how to tackle like negative talk on and off the table. It's about learning how to, you know, distance oneself from the dice, like affecting you to the point where it doesn't let you make proper decisions, or you blame the dice and therefore you never you don't grow because if you blame the dice, there's no control, right? And you're just kind of like there's no control over it, so there's nothing I can do about it, right? It's about building lists or learning how to mentally visualize what each unit in an army is supposed to do on the table, or how to um, you know get hit really hard on like the first turn, right? And lose like 400 points to your army, or 500 points to your army, and still play the game fresh without like getting what we call on tilt, right? Which is like
Mhm.
just kind of going into that fight, flight, or freeze response, which is very like, you know, like ingrained in like our DNA, basically.
Mhm.
Um, and that combined with, being like trying to be a positive force for not just you and your opponent, but also yourself and your development and growth. And for some people it's easy and they're like happy go lucky all the time. And then some people it's like harder because, you just have like there's more stuff that's happening behind the scenes or that's like, clouding you mentally. And, I like to say I'm a pretty positive person. And do I get depressed? Yes. Do I have anxiety? 100%. Do I probably have undiagnosed ADHD or ADD? More than likely. Um,
No comment.
no comment there. Um,
I know.
spoilers. Um, anyway, so, and so there's a lot of strategies or techniques that I've used over the years, and I feel like specializing in that has allowed me to help other people identify areas where they sort of struggle, that are sort of like skill sets that then you can apply to whatever army you're playing, any edition you're playing. So it's there's a lot more to the game than just I need to get the best units to roll the best dice. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
and I try and transcend that. So it's not only teaching you how to play the game and think critically, but also how to have mental fortitude that then allows you to get better and becomes more of a lifestyle thing rather than just I want to win, right? And it's a different style.
Mhm. So, like, full disclosure, I go to Skari. Like, yes, I want to get better at the game, obviously. But I find it very difficult to like learn and allow myself to learn while being so like visible, I guess, within the wargaming community, and actually like actively getting comments in YouTube videos and stuff about how bad I am at the game. And I struggle to let myself learn, and that is something that Skari is working with me on, and me learning to be kind to myself in the learning process. What are some other, maybe more interesting reasons that people have come to you for coaching?
I think, um, well, every single person is different. So I've had folks come to me for, mentality mainly, being like, hey, every time I start losing, I just my brain shuts off and I can't think properly. I need to develop a strategy that I can lose my favorite unit or like lose, and still play the game. And, so you do that. I think some of the most interesting ones is something simple like I want to win my local league, right?
Hmm.
Where it's just it's me and my four friends, and I want to beat everybody, right? And it's a very specific like, Fred
Yeah,
plays Blood Angels and
yeah,
John plays Necrons and whatever it is, and you go,
yeah.
okay, and they literally have the same armies all the time, and I'm gonna run this army and I just want to crush them. And you're like, okay, right? So so then you do like little meta things or like watch out for this unit or this combo or whatever, and you kind of work it that way. And then other times it's someone like, hey, I haven't played in 4 years. I'm getting back into the game and I don't want to embarrass myself. Like, I just want to go to a table and not do terrible. Right.
Hmm.
And some people have that expectation where they're like, I just need a refresher. And it could be like me working with them for a month or 2 months or whatever it is. It's not necessarily long term because everybody has different goals, right? That you
Hmm.
kind of achieve over time. And sometimes the goal is just that. I haven't played in forever. I don't know anything about ninth edition. I don't know how the missions work. And so each session is just, okay, these are the missions, this is how you score, this is how you play the game, and then they go and they've kind of learnt instead of having to play a lot to learn, they just kind of chat it out, we go over it, and then they've learnt it, and then they can go off and do their thing. So
Hmm.
that's yeah, so
So it's
those are the
just
more
all over the
interesting ones.
place.
Yeah, it varies
Yeah.
wildly. Yeah, you'd be surprised to just, yeah.
I don't think that I would,
Yeah.
because I think that sometimes I feel like I'm the only person who comes to you with like such a like psychological coaching need. No,
You're definitely not the toughest coachee that I've had
I'm
in terms
shocked.
of mentality.
I'm shocked.
Yeah, I'm just saying,
Okay.
you know,
I don't feel
it's
so
like,
bad then.
and I appreciate how, like, as a coach,
Mhm.
and this is part of I think we're going to be talking about this because we kind of discussed this in the rubric, but like being honest with your coach and open with your coach and telling your coach what you need and what you want is a big part of the whole process. It's like a symbiotic relationship where, you know, you as a client have to be comfortable discussing what you need, and like, if because we did a couple sessions, you're like, this doesn't work for me, like this whole thing doesn't work, and so we kind of pivoted to something else that was definitely a heck of a lot more effective and kind of like really kind of got some growth going. But that was only because you were very aware of saying, hey, you know like, we have to try something different, right? And
Mhm.
me as my coach, it's my responsibility to go, okay, let's try this other thing, or whatever, and
Yeah.
get something that suits your particular needs, right?
Yeah. Yeah. This whole idea that like all you need to do is play games, like that's what I did to get good at the game, that's all you're going to need. It feels a little reminiscent of some of the gatekeeping behaviors that we sort of see in online spaces regarding the hobby. Like, well, this is the way it's always been done, so this is the way that it has to keep going, and there's no like wiggle room in there. And it's like you said, some people really are not a good fit for coaching at all. Um, but as somebody who really values our coaching sessions together and I feel like I get a lot out of them. Um, and also as somebody who has like actively been gate kept in the community, it kind of gives me that same feeling, but maybe that's just my bias speaking.
Well, I came through the hobby with that whole, you have to play, you know Trevor, who, by the way, these are all made up names. You have to
The names have
play.
changed to protect the
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
innocent.
You have to play Trevor, and you're a noob, and he's going to stomp all over you for many games until you learn the hard way. That's how I learned how to play the game.
Mhm.
However, I feel like I'm stubborn and doggedly determined enough that every beatdown kind of like gave like fueled the fire inside of me to like keep on going and like get better, and that sort of self, like, I like would read everything I could and scour the internet and like just as much as I could, and I literally got obsessed is what happened, and now I do this as a job. But you know, like, nowadays it's not something you need to do to get the same results anymore, right? It's just like a lot less energy from people than, plus with COVID, that's really sort of like, spearheaded the fact that, some people haven't been able to play games in 2 years,
Mhm.
face to face games at least.
Mhm.
And TTS and Tabletop Simulator are great tools, but they're not the same as that, like, tactile, touching the models, grabbing the models, the spatial awareness of the table, the terrain, and how big it is, and how it like impacts the game, depending on where the objectives are and stuff. It's totally different than just
Mhm.
going out and getting your nose beaten in every single time.
I have a question though. How many people do you think maybe came into the group and then immediately left because Trevor just kicked the snot out of them their
I don't
first game?
remember.
No.
No, all I know is I eventually graduated and then got to play with the with.
With the big boys.
That's right. I remember the day too. I drew Trevor. It was a draw, and I was so happy. It was like a win for me after months and months and months of playing games and getting pooped on by dark angels over and over and over again. Anyway, let's just say that it was like I wore it like a badge of honor, right?
Mhm.
However, I can see, like, looking back, I was probably very young and naive at the time, but I could see how that would be frustrating for somebody who bought an army, collected and painted an army, and then went to like get a pickup game on a Saturday and got to play Trevor, who would then kick their teeth in and go, try again next week. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then
Oh, Trevor.
yeah, yeah. Anyway, he's a great guy, by the way. Get along with him really well. Haven't seen him in a long time, but we're still friends on Facebook. Mhm.
Excellent. Um, I have noticed it a little bit in my local scene. And I'm not sure that it's just the act of just kicking somebody's teeth in when they're new. I think it's like the approach to it, right? Because I think I personally feel that more developed players I feel like they should have a responsibility to like grow their local community. And I think just like rolling in, kicking somebody's teeth in and then leaving isn't really growing the community, whereas you could maybe impart maybe a little bit of your knowledge with them, and then you can still kick their teeth in, but then they can like have a lesson and move on, and then maybe they will actually do better next time.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think, as a group, the Warhammer sort of community in general is a very open and positive community. Just like and then in comparison to other communities, or what I've heard from other sort of like gaming communities, I do feel like it is a lot more open than and a lot more welcoming than a
Hmm.
lot of communities and I think it's because of the diversity within the 40th millennium itself, like the setting, it lends itself to people like from different walks of life, all kind of like loving a different part of the lore or a different faction, things like that. I think as a society or as a gaming group, we've also sort of matured in a way. And a lot of us that did get beat up when we were coming up in the School of Hard Knocks understand that that's not the way to foster new people coming into the hobby. Like you don't want to. It's not like the old adage of like um, kung fu master or whatever, like making you carry buckets of water up a hill until you like can't anymore and you want to quit and you walk away and then like yeah you're not good enough for training and then you have this like existential crisis. Like that's like hero stuff, right? Like but we're not all we're not all going to do that. So
uh,
um be
um,
more welcoming to the people around you is what I say.
yes, yes.
I went on a tangent.
Uh,
See, ADHD.
I like it though. Okay, so let's talk about the second sort of trend that I saw in comments that seemed a little bit contentious when it came to coaching, and that was very much a concern over who your coach was or who you picked to be your coach. So some people were like the main one seemed to be around whack players. And I think the concern was that they would also teach their I don't is students the right word?
It could be student. I guess each person would be
Yeah.
different.
Uh
Padawan, if you're a Jedi.
Padawan. Okay, we'll go with
Um,
Padawan. That they would also teach their Padawans how to be whack
Maybe
players.
we could call them Dice ones, because they're rolling dice and stuff. More of that. Check the links down below. Follow me on social
Oh
media. We
God.
get tons of that stuff.
Uh,
Um, I get what you're saying. And I think that is very much up to the individual person to connect with someone who they feel has their best interest at heart, right? Are there win at all cost players that do coaching? More than likely, right? Are they teaching their students or their clients tricks and stuff that aren't necessarily kosher, right? Like, psychological warfare or whatever. Like, sure, absolutely. Is that something I condone? No, I don't agree with that. And it's up to each individual person to take a hard look at sort of like what they want to present to the world.
mhm.
You know what I mean? And I've had clients who've sort of gone from different coaching client to different coaching client, and then they end up coming to me and they're like, "Hey, I haven't found what I'm looking for in terms of a good fit for a coach. This is what I'm looking for." You start working with them, and they go, "Man, I've learned more in 4 weeks than I did in a month with somebody else." Right? So, and I'm sure that I've had coaching clients that have said, "Hey, I don't like Skari's style. I'm gonna go do something else with someone else," and then they find like what they're looking for with someone else, right?
Hmm.
And and I think it's up to each individual player. However, yeah, like if the coach that you um like bring on to like teach you something is definitely going to reflect on you as a person. Like at if like especially not only is there a bit of stigma associated with coaching sometimes, but it's also like if you have a specific coach, then it's like you could get like, ridiculed sometimes. Being like, "Oh, come on, like is he going to teach you how to cheat?" Whatever it is. Like and that's unfortunate that but it does come with sort of like the names attached with certain people.
Hmm.
And and there was a second part of that point that I wanted to make, which I've totally forgotten, but I might remember later.
Okay. Yeah, I did also see that there was some concern about picking somebody who is a cheater and that they would also teach you how to
I
cheat.
remember now.
Okay.
Yeah. So there is some concern to that, and that's definitely important. Another thing is, as a coach myself,
Hmm.
I'm very concerned with the image that my clients have of me. So
Okay.
if I am teaching someone how to play the game, I have a very like, be a nice person, don't cheat, use the rules. But if I were to coach someone who then went to an event and had a temper tantrum or cheated, like I would not coach them anymore.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I would not want to have my name associated with that type of person, right? So I feel like it goes both ways. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
it's in my case, it's not because I'm getting paid to coach them. I don't like if one person wants coaching, that's great. And if one person doesn't want, that's great either. Or if I have to let them go because they are not like they're not a nice person that I don't want my name associated with them. Does that make sense? So I
Hmm.
feel like it's the responsibility of the coaches as well to be kept responsible for the people that they have under their tutelage, if that
Hmm.
makes sense.
Hmm.
So, and that accountability I think is important. And as this whole career or as this whole sort of like um it matures over time, like there will be expectations and there'll probably be some sort of like regulation, if that makes sense,
Hmm.
of it as it gets bigger and as it grows and as it matures.
Hmm. Hmm. The other thing that I found was there was some concern over picking somebody who, I guess, for better term, would be considered a scrub. And again, like I get that these are concerns. Like I guess they're concerned that you would pick somebody who's not very good at the game to teach you then how to not be very good at the game. Um, and that is all up to like the individual, right? But I also don't think that that takes into account what we talked about before about like maybe winning isn't what this person's going for coaching for, right? Maybe that scrub is somebody who has like just excellent sportsmanship and that's what they want to learn, right? Like we you don't really know why people are picking other people, and that really has to come down to the individual doing the choosing, the individual is going for coaching. Um, but all of these seem to I'm just sort of coming to it now. All of these seem to revolve around not understanding the reasons for the individual going into coaching.
Yeah. And it's like, and I go back to the personal training thing, right?
Mhm.
Like somebody who gets trained by a friend, for example,
Mhm.
because they just got out of college for kinesthesiology and they're like nutritionists or whatever, and they're like getting into the business.
Mhm.
A lot of the times, a friend will sign up with them and get coaching from them to support them as a friend. And
Mhm.
it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, like over time, if you want to be the best of the best, yes, ideally you want to get the best coach that you can get, right, or that you can afford. You know, if you want
Mhm.
to be an Olympian level athlete, you're going to get a coach that was probably at the Olympics at some point and knows how it goes, and like, you know what I mean? Like you're going to
Mhm.
find somebody who knows what they're doing.
Mhm.
Um, you know, and in 40K, yes, it's the same, but it's more about what you're looking for, which is what we talked about, because it could be that this person, and for example, painting, like coaching for painting, for example, if you want to learn how to paint, you know, there might be somebody who's really good at edge highlighting, but then you want to learn how to wet blend, and they suck at edge highlighting, but they're really good at wet blending. So you're gonna get them to teach you how to wet blend. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so in the broader term, they might not be the best painter, but you really like their style of
Mhm.
how they get the colors to mix or whatever, and you're like, I want to do that. So it's the same with game coaching,
Mhm.
right? It's you know, you might have not won like a big event or the ITC or whatever it is, but I like that you can do so well or so consistently with this faction, and
Yep.
that no matter what you do, you're you're positive, and I like how you apply that faction to the table,
Mhm.
right? And how you use the tools you have, and that is attractive to me. I want to be able to do that, even though it's a not the best faction,
Mhm.
or you know what I mean? That
Yeah.
you know, so you detract, you kind of like you know, you get that bond there.
So there's all sorts of people who go for all sorts of reasons, and there's coaches that are good at all sorts of different things. Are there any sort of like universal traits that would make somebody an excellent coach?
Hmm. I think one of the biggest things is like something that I've learned from just teaching people,
Mhm.
and a universal trait is number one, you have to be better at listening than talking, which I know is really hard for me. Because I talk a lot. Uh,
Not only that, sometimes you don't listen.
yeah, there you go. I'm
Hey!
like, what was that? No, I'm just kidding. Um, that's the ADHD talking. But a lot of times it's understanding how to sometimes just fix one thing instead of trying to fix lots of little things. It's like, you know, you get the bet if you can take a broader look at what you are working with and break it apart and fix one bigger issue than fixing a lot of little issues, you get a lot more done,
Mhm.
right? You know, it's one of the reasons why, for example, we use that tracking sheet where you fill in your games and all your points. You know, I've got clients that have like 200 games on that tracking sheet.
Mhm.
And over time you can see trends that show up on every time you pick this secondary on this mission, right?
Mhm.
You get 0 points on this secondary. Like
Mhm.
you can't pick that secondary anymore because it's 30 games down and you've done it every single time, right?
Mhm.
So it gives you like statistic. So being able to identify that sort of stuff is important.
Mhm.
And um and also that patience, right? And that ability to sort of be encouraging but also tell you how it is. Like I think you know, a good coach is one that makes you puke at practice and you hate them, but then you show up to practice the next time, right?
Well, in our
Because
last session, you were like, "Oh, how does this idea going forward feel to you? Are you comfortable with it?" I'm like, "No, I'm not comfortable with it at all." You're like, "Good."
good, because uncomfortability leads to growth. It's you know, it's a very if you're comfortable, you're not growing. You're just comfortable. So
Yeah.
you have to get uncomfortable to grow. So it's about pushing the boundaries and sort of forcing you to grow a lot of the times, whether you want to or not. Your coach will always tell you this is, you know, is pushing you past your comfort zone, and even though it's hard, it's going to be you're going to grow after it, right? So there has to be that level of trust between like the coach and the person who they're working with, and that it gets developed over time. That rapport develops over time, but it's definitely something that a good coach will have that rapport with you.
Hmm. So if somebody wants to get coaching, is there any tips that you can give them on how to find a coach that would be reputable, or finding a coach that would help them reach their goals?
Well, the biggest thing would be to ask questions, right? You
Hmm.
know, I before I've started coaching a few clients, a lot of times it starts with them sending me emails, being like, "Hey, I'm looking to do this or that. How would it work? Like, what does it entail?" Like, and it's about ask questions, right? Or find someone that is being coached by said person and ask them, "Hey, how does the session look? What does it feel like? What are you gaining out of it?" And other than that, the other option would be to have like a test session. I'm pretty sure most coaches would be like, "Hey, do you mind doing like a test session with me?"
Hmm.
Just as like a one-off. Absolutely. Well, personally, I would. I can't speak for anybody else, but I have done that where I'm like, "Hey, let's do a little 30-minute brief, like, you know, um, introduction. Ask me questions, see how it works." And that's what I would recommend is reach out, talk to people, instead of taking it like at face value. Like, do some digging and see if it's something that would work for you.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, the third thing, the third conclusion that I came to,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, and this wasn't like nobody just came out and said like, "Oh, I'm jealous of these coaches because I want to make money doing Warhammer stuff," but I do kind of get that feeling, and I get that feeling because of interactions that I've had as a content creator where people get really hostile towards people who make money doing anything related to Warhammer. Even though I don't make money anything related to Warhammer.
Most
Um,
YouTubers make tons of money
Maybe
from
they
YouTube.
do if they monetize their channels. I don't. Well, they don't make money from YouTube. It's all the other stuff. Yeah. But yeah, that is kind of the feeling that I get is some people just don't want you to make money off of this thing that they have such passion for.
Yeah, and that's fine. Like
Mm-hmm.
as I said with coaching, like everybody's entitled to how they feel about something.
Mm-hmm.
Right? However, if I didn't have a Patreon and I didn't coach and I didn't charge for the expertise that I have, even though, yes, I give a lot of advice out for free, right? Like you can send me a and I'll interact with you, right? Like it's not like it's a paywall where you're not allowed to talk to me unless you give me money, right? Um, right? If I didn't do that, I wouldn't be able to put a roof over my head.
Yeah.
Because like for me, it's like it's part of a bigger picture of creating content and entertainment, and things like that. And that's the thing. It's not that I just play games for a living. It's a specialized skill set, right?
Yeah.
And it's like an artist going into a bar and doing a show, right? Like they're entertaining the crowd, and you don't want to be that bar that pays them in exposure, right? Where they literally go out and you can play and sell your CD, but we're not going to give you money. Like that's like, and those places exist. That's not cool. Like it's the same with like artists online that render art and do art and portraits and a whole bunch of stuff. Like a lot of freelance artists, like companies would be like, "Give it to me for free and I'll put your link in the description or whatever." No, pay artists for their work. Pay like, like they put time and effort into making beautiful art and like commission D&D characters or whatever it is. Like pay them for their fucking art, right? The same. So if I make a video and or I like talk to someone about like playing the game, or I do a campaign with like friends and I film it and I put the time into editing, or I hire an editor to do it or whatever, like I'm putting time, I'm effort, and I'm hoping to entertain you. So if you like that entertainment and you'd like to support what I do so I can keep on making it, that's where that comes in. It's not like well, at least in my case, there's no like paywall to get only battle reports, you know what I mean? But I am not ashamed of getting paid for what I do. I still feel it's kind of weird because it's kind of surreal that I get to do this for a job, and I'm like grateful. But I love it. And I know that if I didn't charge for the service, I wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah.
You
But
know what I
also,
mean?
like, I do believe that it's up to the individuals to decide
Mhm.
if your time and expertise is worth paying for, right?
Agreed.
And for me, it is because I feel like we're on like the cusp of like a breakthrough.
You need more ball pistols and chain swords.
oh my god, not this again. Although full
There you
pistols and
go.
chainswords.
Ball pistols and chainsaws. Excellent.
If people don't know,
Definitely more than las guns. Yeah,
las
that's
guns
yeah,
and no
definitely.
swords. Zero swords. A
A couple
bayonet.
of Taliban. Yeah, bayonets. There you go.
Yeah.
You need it. You need more bayonets.
Yeah. Oh, no.
That's how to beat Dark Eldar, folks. Chainswords and bull pistols. That came from
Correct.
my mouth. Okay, anybody out
It
there?
became a meme. Uh,
I know. So funny.
so I wanted to close it out by me just talking about my own sort of experiences and like using that information to sort of give some people advice if coaching is something that they're kind of on the fence about. Um, so my first piece of advice, get your thoughts on it, is to go into coaching with a clear idea of what you would like to achieve for yourself, right? So for me, I went into coaching and I said I'd really like to be comfortable at the table. Um, Winning games would be great, but I would just like to have some sort of like confidence and be able to make decisions faster, essentially. And I'm sure everybody's going to have different reasons about like why they want to be there. But if you can have a really clear idea going in, I feel like your coach is going to be able to get you there faster because they won't have to
Yep,
dig to find out why you're there.
mhm,
Hmm.
I agree.
Do you think that that's like an accurate representation of because like that's the idea that I have that I think
Yeah,
I want
100%.
in.
And from that, it's kind of we've been able to find little growth areas or areas that have sort of helped reinforce that, whether it was making sure we have like a plan or like like how to ask specific questions before a game, or like a thought process of like what secondaries to pick, and or just as something as simple as the structure of your turn, where you're like thinking, okay, how do I stop my opponent from scoring, how do I score points, that sort of thing. And that in and of itself, having like a framework, has allowed, and you can look at it as like an anatomical skeleton, right, for like comfortability at the table, is you having a good framework allows you to build stuff around it where it can be like the motion becomes a lot faster and quicker.
Hmm.
And over time that sort of becomes easier, or you can kind of like start crafting the fingers and stuff instead of just the legs. Like first you need to like be able to walk around, and then you craft more and more to then make it more fluid. And I
Hmm.
feel like that's a good representation of your journey specifically,
Hmm.
as well as you know, and that's like a part of it, right? And how we've worked on it.
Hmm. My second piece of advice is to make sure that you find a coach that can facilitate your clear idea of what you want out of coaching. So if you go into a coaching session and they're not like listening to you, so if I went into a coaching session and the coach was like, okay, you're gonna win like your next RTT and we're gonna like make you play this list and all of that, and I might maybe like, whoa, 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 I feel like you didn't listen to what I wanted at all right there. So I feel
Mm.
like find a coach that facilitates that for you and listen to your spidey senses. So if something doesn't feel right with this coach, then there's lots of other ones out there. Hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I think you have to. I agree with you. I think it definitely has to be, that rapport has to be built, and you'll build that pretty quickly. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? And and if you're not sure, like you can give like you have to really understand what you want, and that goal setting, that part of like, hey, I want to set like this goal, and how do we achieve that goal and break it down, right? That's an important part of just coaching in general.
Hmm.
If you're going to get a personal trainer, and you're going to pay that personal trainer to get like, I want to you know, you know, uh, be able to run a mile, in whatever 4 minutes or whatever. Then they should have like a plan or set in place of like, hey, this is what we're gonna do. And if they're like, well, first I'm gonna get you to I don't know, starve yourself or whatever, you'd be like, you know, like so. Anyway, that's just my
uh,
analogy kind of fell out there. I
Okay,
tried.
so the third one, I'm really interested on your take on this one, is
Yeah,
be flexible and open to trying new things even if they are uncomfortable. You make me
I
do
agree.
things that are really uncomfortable, but I feel like those are the things that have led to the most growth for me.
One of the things I love is, you when we had a conversation the other day, and one of the things that we were working on a lot was like movement stuff, and we were like, okay, using like your rules, especially specifically move, 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 and guardsmen to really sort of like dominate the point scoring aspect of the game, where you were like, um, you were really proud of the fact that you went and made Alex McDougall score 0 points on primary on a turn by like just running a bunch of guardsmen around, right? Like top like player, you literally ran a bunch of guardsmen onto his objectives and made him score 0 points for that turn.
It probably wasn't
And
the right judgment call for the game, but I did
that's
it.
fine. But we'd been working on that aspect, and that sort of like anxiety, right? That I remember you feeling when we were going through a lot of those scenarios where I forced you to use that rule over and over and over to get out of things, right?
Hmm.
And to, get into better situations, led to you being a lot more comfortable looking at that tool in your list as like an outlet to be like, these guys are dead. They're meat to the slaughter, but you're going to score 0 points.
Yeah.
And it took a little bit of like growth and uncomfortability to get to that point where before I remember when we started, you wanted to keep them all alive with your banner and keep them all nice and close. And like, I don't want any of my guardsmen to die. I want to keep them as
uh,
alive as possible, right? And so it's developed into more of a, okay, I've got these tools and I want to use it. But it
mhm,
did take that sort of uncomfortability of getting out of that framework that you had and kind of looking at it differently.
mhm.
So I agree with that statement. I think you need to be challenged in order to grow, and you need to find somebody who helps challenge you without making you feel stupid, right? Like,
Right.
and that has that trust with you and that rapport where you can feel challenged without being belittled, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Because we're all growing. Like I learn a lot from everybody who I coach, as much as I teach them. And I think
Interesting.
it's really cool. Yeah, I always because anyway, yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the fourth sort of advice that I have is be honest with your coach about how it's going. Um, I'm really honest with you.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
And I appreciate that.
and
To be
so
as a coach, I really appreciate it.
sometimes the day is not going very well, and I actually cry a lot in coaching because it is so uncomfortable for me. um, but I think it's really important that you kind of like know where I'm at in the journey and
Mhm.
on that day even.
Yep.
um, I feel like sometimes when you're like trying to like bottle everything up inside, you're not as open to actually learning things. And the amount of like actually doing the scenarios on TTS was really good because it gives me something to like focus on through all the frustrations as well. Um,
Yep.
yeah. So I think it's really important to be open and honest with your coach.
Yeah. Like if you want to work on something or you want to um, not work on something. You ultimately have final say. Like last game, this army beat the shit out of me. So you know what I need to do? I need to learn more about this army that I just played against.
Hmm.
Or, I don't really feel like we need to talk about this topic. Let's talk about this topic, right? And you need to kind of tell that to your coach as you're working with them. Because
Hmm.
then your time is more effectively used and your coach's time is more effectively used by really like being able to touch on the topics that you feel that you need work on. And sometimes you might feel like you need to work on something, but it's really about like a game issue rather than like something else. Like it could be layered in there, but you need to kind of tell your coach so that they can help you process that information or get through it.
Hmm. Hmm. I really think it's important to take ownership of the process, right?
Mm.
It's not just your coach talking at you.
Yeah.
Like, if that was the case, all you would do is just take notes the entire time, and that's not what coaching is, at least for me. Um, and I try at every point of coaching to like be proactive with it. I struggle with realizing like where I need to grow first, I think. So I kind of rely on you for that. Um, but you know, if there are things that come up that I particularly want to work on, I make sure that I'm communicating that to you.
And I agree, and that's something that as a coach I really appreciate when you and the other people who I work with are very open and very clear about what they want to do, like where they like what they're struggling on, especially, and then onus is on me to sort of help iron those out.
Hmm. And we sort of talked about this one a little bit earlier, but my last point of advice is do not be afraid to give your coach constructive criticism.
That's key. Definitely
Constructive criticism.
you need to build the blocks and break them down.
So for me, I know what I need. I need very like step by step. Step one, step two, step three. That's how I learn. And a few weeks ago, maybe like 2 months ago, I communicated that to you. I was like, hey, what we're doing is not working. I need more structure. Maybe we could try this. And it's been going a lot better since then, I think. But
And
that
it's doing great.
that growth that I've had, I don't know if that would have happened if I wasn't comfortable enough giving you that constructive criticism.
Oh, 100%. And I think just in anything, like you should be able to say, hey, like I would like to try this, or this works better, this doesn't work better. And it could be something as simple as me like posing a situation or a question or working on something with you, or when we set goals. A lot of the times, it could be a goal you set, or it could be a goal that your coach is sort of pushing you to set to expand your growth potential, right? But you have to be open and honest with your coach. Like you were going to go to an RTT recently and you were like, this is what I want to do, and this is what I feel like I'm going to do. And we had an honest conversation, being like, as your coach, I feel like you're like we had that criticism, like the constructive conversation, being like, I feel like you're selling yourself short, and I feel like this is what you're capable of, and that was, and that's something that's also important is you tell me, hey, I need to have more structured goals, but then I'm going to keep you honest on yourself with those steps as well, being like, this is a goal, this is a goal, this is a step, this is a step. Um, Even if I think that you're not pushing yourself hard enough sometimes, if that makes sense.
You think I'm not
Just in
pushing
that one
myself
situation.
hard enough?
No, in that context, for that when you had set a
Look at
goal that I
this.
didn't think was high enough for you.
Look at this, like live action tough love happening right here.
That's because I believe in you and I know you can do it.
Aw. All right. Well, I do appreciate the tough love. It does actually work really well for me, so thank you, I guess. It
I like the tough love as a coach too.
stings
It's
a
just
little
funny
bit.
because you were recently going through, hey, I need a switch when we need to find a new army, whatever.
Yeah.
And you're like, tell me in steps how this works. I was like, step one, step two, step three. And I literally like threw out some steps so that it would like, like
Make
click better for you.
makes sense in my
Yeah,
brain.
make more sense. And then
Yeah.
as soon as that was it, you're like, even though it was like just steps, very simple steps, but it like helped you visualize what was happening basically. Yeah.
Yeah. See? Like that constructive criticism about needing more structure, it's paying off.
Work like a charm.
Right? All these
Yeah.
all this stuff is just working. Um all right. So that's all I have. Did you have anything else that you wanted to touch on?
Thank you so much for having me on, Tanya. I think if there's one thing I would like to teach people how to do, it's how to be nice. All dice.
Hey, you said the name of the title and the thing.
I did.
You
I love
did.
doing that.
Um, so if people through watching this have decided that, hey, maybe Skari would be a good fit for me as a coach, how can they find you?
You can follow the links that you've put up.
It's true.
Best
They'll
thing
be
is
in the
to
description.
yeah, right down there. Just clickety clack on that link thing.
Do
Other than
the
that,
do
make sure
like
you
the subscribe as well and the bell
thumbs
and
up the
leave a
bell.
comment.
Correct.
All
Let
that
us know
stuff.
why you want coaching, and why it's the best thing ever.
Or if you think that we're full of BS, you can also tell us in the comments. Yeah.
It's true. We
Yeah.
might not read those comments.
I will. I read all the comments. You don't have to. I will. uh, well, that's. I mean, that's all I've got for you.
Thank you so much, Tanya. This was really fun. And thanks a lot for watching and listening, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the topic. This is definitely a good, relevant topic right now.
I agree, and I'm sure this is the third time you've been on here. I'm sure I'm gonna get you on again because you're like my best friend. So.
I'm going to say the irony of this whole thing is I was drinking tea out of this mug.
uh, thanks so much, Skari, and thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye. Alright, folks, I want to know, have you ever considered getting coaching for yourself for Warhammer 40k? Or maybe you're one of those people that finds the idea of coaching a little bit contentious. Let me know in the comments down below. And if you like what I'm doing here on the channel, please consider subscribing and hit the notification bell so you always know when a new video goes live. I do tons of other stuff besides this. You can catch me on my own Twitch channel on Saturdays. You can also find me on Skari's Twitch channel on Thursdays and Fridays. I'm a co-host of Forge the Narrative podcast, and I do daily updates to Instagram. So I hope to see you there, and until next time, be nice and roll dice.